I'm going to show you something that should make you even more alarmed, that our own army is short of even ammunition being bled dry by the Albanese government. It's also something that should make you even more worried, that this government is also making electricity supplies so shaky and expensive that there is no way that we will get ahead in artificial intelligence, which needs so much electricity that companies like Microsoft, which are getting into it, plan to have their own nuclear reactors. Now, you might have thought it cute when China revealed it had dancing robots. I mean, so advanced. But did you really think that China was developing robots just to dance? This year, a Chinese company unveiled a robot that can also do kung fu, that potentially can fight. And last week, China's People's Liberation Army released a video of army exercises. And look at the stars, robot wolves, armed and fighting alongside human soldiers. Now, China first unveiled an early version of this new weapon a couple of years ago, but this latest model looks more rugged and advanced. It is still steered by pilots, but wait until these robot wolves get artificial intelligence so that they can fight independently, identifying and targeting their own targets using their independent judgment. And if you think talk of Chinese attacks, well, it's all alarmist, warmonger, check out the warning posted by China's Foreign Ministry just last week after Japan's Prime Minister suggested Japan would defend Taiwan from a Chinese invasion. I'll translate it for you. It was actually in Japanese, warning Japan any attempt to provoke the bottom line of the Chinese people will inevitably be met with a severe counterattack from China. Their heads will be split open and they will be covered in blood. A Chinese consul in Japan even warned Japan's leader on X that China wouldn't hesitate to cut off a dirty neck. I really don't think many Australians realise how threatening our neighbourhood has got. The way I sometimes see politics is like, it's all being played for domestic games, like the rest of the world doesn't really exist. We can just muddle them on, do little playground fights in Canberra and it doesn't have any consequence. Joining me back at last from his break, the country's top foreign affairs writer, Greg Sheridan of The Australian. Greg, great to see you back. Isn't it extraordinary to have the world's second biggest superpower threatening to cut off the head of Japan's female Prime Minister and to split Japan's head wide open and cover it with blood? What kind of country acts and talks like that?
Well, Andrew, it's great to be with you, and you're right to highlight this. When the Chinese talk to each other or talk to the Japanese or the Koreans or sometimes the Filipinos or sometimes us, they speak in very harsh tones, very, very harsh tones. Xi Jinping routinely tells his troops to prepare for war. Now, Andrew, you're right to highlight this robot capability. We've been discussing, and I've been writing for years, about the absolute hopeless position of the Australian Defence Force in terms of drone capabilities. We're seeing in Ukraine what drones can do and how adaptable and fast they are. They're kind of, in a sense, primitive robots, and they're not yet powered by AI. And we're nowhere in this. We're just, on the tiniest fringe, we're doing almost nothing in drones because all of our defence budget is taken up with the AUKUS subs, and the Albanese government won't spend any significant money on defence. So we have almost no missiles and almost no drones, certainly nothing that could counter the Chinese. We just depended entirely on the Americans. So the Albanese government is winning the politics at the moment, but you couldn't imagine a government doing a worse job across every sphere of Australian interest: military, economic, social, the whole lot.
Well, one of them is, of course, climate change policies, global warming policies. And I want to segue from exactly this, the electronic wolves, which highlights something. As I said, look, in another decade, can you imagine? They'll have war robots that are going to have artificial intelligence, so they can fight without even an operator. You just chuck them out the battlefield and they'll go and sort it all out themselves. Meanwhile, we don't have enough electricity for an artificial intelligence industry of our own to sort of combat that capability. And with Labor's net zero policies, I doubt we'll even have enough electricity for our existing economy. What do you make of the net zero argument given that sort of context?
Well, I think you're absolutely right, Andrew, and I want to congratulate the Liberal and National parties. They've taken a big step, and it's a good step. You know, we're so used to the Liberals making a mess of everything, we should recognise a moment when they do something right. I've got a column in tomorrow's paper pointing out that the Liberal National Party policy is now far more in step with what's happening internationally. The whole world, including The Economist magazine as recently as August, has said basically net zero is a fiction, it's a folly, it's a fantasy, and it'll never happen, and trying to get there imposes ludicrous costs on an economy. Therefore, let's dispense with net zero. We'll still try to reduce emissions a bit, although China and India and the big emitters are not doing that, but nonetheless we'll still try to reduce emissions a bit. What you're seeing is the addition of enormous amounts of renewable energy on top of fossil fuels. The International Energy Agency just released its World Energy Outlook for 2024. In 2024, global emissions went up, so the world is not decarbonising. The world derived more energy from coal in 2024 than it ever has in the history of the human race. The use of coal has doubled in the last couple of decades. Everything the Albanese government tells us is baloney. Everyone knows, except official Australia, that fossil fuel energy is much cheaper than renewable energy. But the Labor Party has been so successful in setting up all of these climate quongos, which exist only to produce pro-maximum climate change action propaganda. All of their modelling is based on the most ropey possible assumptions. It doesn't gel with the studies and modelling that is done overseas. And the Liberal National Party policy today is much more in line with what's happening internationally and much more realistic than Labor's policy. The big question is whether the Liberals can actually wage a successful political fight over this. I mean, you yearn for Tony Abbott to be there because this campaign for the Liberals to succeed, it's not got to be about their policy. It's got to be about Labor's policy. It's got to be a very tough negative campaign. Net zero means job losses. Net zero means inflation. Net zero means industry fleeing Australia and going to China. The debate is there for the Liberals to win, just as it's been won in Britain and America. But whether they can do it, who knows?
Well, it requires conviction. It requires deep knowledge of the policy. And I must admit, Susan Lee has surprised me by showing some knowledge, far more than I gave her credit for. So give her that. But you also got to turn defence into attack. They've got to attack, because the ruins of Labor's net zero policies are all around us. And I don't know why it seemed to be a big tick that they're united in pursuing this. God, that's delusion. Greg Sheridan, I'm so glad you're back, and I urge viewers to read your column in the Australian tomorrow. Thank you so much indeed for your time.
Thanks.